Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. Today I'm joined with Michelle Steiner. Welcome to the Michelle.
Hello, thank you so much.
So why don't you tell me about yourself?
Sure. Well, my name is Michelle Steiner. I live in Pennsylvania with my husband Ron and our two cats, Jack and Sparrow. I am a writer, a speaker, and a photographer, and I work in a school with as a paraeducator for students who have disabilities and some who do not. And excuse me, I have a learning disability myself. I have dyscalculia, which is a math disability. I have limited hand dexterity in both of my hands, and I also have visual perception issues. And I have a blog where I write about my life with a learning disability and feature my photography on my walks.
Oh, good for you. All right. Where do we start off? But
Excuse me.
where do we go? All right. This is going to be an interesting show, everybody, because Michelle and I both have been through the same situation dealing with the Department of Human Resources. And what I mean by that is we both have been with caseworkers. We've both sat down with them and we've both had them tell us, I'm sorry, with your disability, you're not going to be able to accomplish what you want to accomplish. So, with that
Yes.
being said, I'm going to put the questions to the side and I want to get into a real discussion about this because this needs to be talked about. Let's start with you, Michelle. When this happened to you, was this the first time someone has said this to you, or has it been said before?
It has been said before. I can remember even before I went to college, even before I had office vocational rehabilitation caseworker or a psychiatrist, I have been told a lot of times there was things I just wouldn't be able to do with my disability. The first time I remember being aware of that was whenever I was in 10th grade and we were talking about, well, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And I said, well, I know that I want to go to college and I want to work with kids. And I also knew I liked writing, but I had definitely, I have a learning disability. And my learning support teacher told me, well, based upon your math, I don't think you can handle college. Why don't you go to this vocational training school that was offered during school time? And what I find is so ironic is I'm not able to drive because of my disability, and she was suggesting I got into protective services. She was telling me, "Oh, you can learn what to do if there's an emergency and there is a child there." And I'm thinking, I would not be able to drive a police car or an ambulance. I mean, we didn't quite know at that point. It was going to come soon, but she suggested that, and I said, I it just doesn't interest me. So that was the very first time that I had somebody tell me that. Now, when I decided that I wanted to go to college, I did meet with an OBR rep, and they said, okay, that sounds like that's reasonable for to go to community college. A lot of times universities will look at how well you did at a community college, especially since I didn't have SAT scores.
Mhm.
And I think it's great. And I had to get tested. It was all fine and good until I had to get tested for a learning disability to get accommodations at community college. I've never been a great test taker. And the psychiatrist, when they went over my eval, first they wanted to uh, not tell me the truth because they said that the scores were so bad. And I can remember my mom's like, no, you got to be honest with her. And I can remember the psychiatrist put on my report, you're most likely not going to go beyond community college.
Ouch.
I, yeah, and I was already scared. I was very young and I was
Mhm.
very, I knew it wasn't going to be easy, but I thought, well, maybe I would want to do university someday. And when I got to community college, I faced more stigma surrounding that. I had people that thought using disability accommodations were cheating. A lot of my peers thought that. I had professors that when I asked for a calculator, they said, oh no, we use our brains in this class. And I also had one of my advisors who told me, you're going to have really limited job choices because of your math.
Ugh.
And despite all of that, I was able to get my associate's degree in early childhood education. I did go on to get my bachelor's degree, and I was having thought, well, maybe I want to go to grad school. So I had to go back and get tested again. And the psychiatrist who evaluated me once again said, "Oh, we don't know if you could do that because of this." Or I wanted to have a job uh, with maybe doing like writing news stories when they ask about stuff I want to do, or speaking on podcasts, or just doing a lot of what the things I can do now. And they said, well, based upon this, you're most likely not going to be able to do any of this.
It's almost as similar to my story, except
Mhm.
I really didn't get tested. I was young
Okay.
like you, and the first time I
Mhm.
remember I wanted to go to school, and they said, "Oh, you'll be able to make it through. All we can do for you is associates." And I'm
Wow.
thinking, why not a 4 year? And they're like, "Oh, we don't think you can handle a 4 year college because you're disabled." And at the time, all they knew was I had ADHD.
Wow.
And then my caseworker moved to a different position. I got a new one, and I sat down with her, and she's like, "And what do you want to do?" I'm like, "I want to get a degree from a year 4 year university." And she's like, "Because of your disability, I don't think you're able to get a 4 year university."
Mhm.
And after that, I was just like speechless, and I'm just looking at my mother, and she knew, my mom saw it in my eyes that I was just furious that there's somebody who had the audacity to sit here and tell me what I can and cannot do. So as we walk out, my mom goes to me, what do you want to do? I'm like, well, I have her supervisor's email address on the sheet
Mhm.
of paper. I'm going to email her and explain the situation and request a new one. My mom's like, well, you better make it tactful because you don't want to demean yourself and bring yourself down. So I wrote an email and I said, listen, I felt very offended that somebody can sit there and lecture
Mhm.
me and tell me that just because I had ADHD that I can't handle a 4 years college. And lo and behold, I have a I have a bachelor's degree. I got it online. Took me four
Good.
years to get it with a 3.05 average. And
So,
then 4 years later, I've always had this in my back of my mind of maybe going for a master's degree.
mhm.
I applied to five different colleges for a program that helps you choose colleges out of the country in Great Britain. I applied to five, got accepted to four.
Wow.
Then I went and I graduated and I didn't get myself a master's, got myself a postgraduate certificate. Same thing,
Mhm.
just a couple of credits short. And then I traveled through Europe for 6 weeks on my own.
Nice.
I mean, the lesson here, and this is what we both talk about is you can't let people tell you what you can and cannot do. These people are paper pushers. All
Yep.
they know what they see is on a piece of paper. They don't know your personality. They don't know your drive, your ambitions. They don't know that if you put yourself to it and that you strive to get to what you want to do, you can accomplish anything you want. You look at me, you look at Michelle, and we both prove them wrong. And I've talked with countless people that have turned the tables on the Department of Rehab and shown them we are capable. Now, Michelle, my question to you is, what do you think can be done to to this agency to streamline it and educate them on the world of disability and neurodiverse?
Biggest things is to make a more customized approach to things and not just putting a rubber stamp on people so they can get the job done. I can remember when I was at college, before I got there, they tried getting me some job coaching,
Mhm.
and it just never seemed to be the right fit for me. It was always for folks that have intellectual disabilities, which there's nothing wrong with that. It just wasn't the appropriate placement for me. And when my college professor was saying we were sending some people in from that agency to come and talk with some of their clients, and he looked at me like he was looking at a ghost when I told him that I was involved with that. He goes, "Oh, I thought only people that were really bad off did that." And he, you know, was wondering. So I think part of it is doing a customized approach to this. If you have somebody that comes in and they have a dream of working in education, take me for example, I knew I couldn't do a certified teacher for me because of my testing, but I could find when my own research, I was able to find a program that you still got to work with kids or adults that had disabilities, and it just wasn't, it didn't have a lot of math and science, and it wasn't a certification program. So I think it's that customized approach. I also, and just because you go in for one thing doesn't necessarily mean that that has to be what somebody sticks with. If it's not going to be a program that works out, there's always something that can be close to that.
Mhm.
And I think it's just really listening to what that person wants and not just saying, oh, because of this score or because of this test, what it looks like on paper, this is what you can do. Because it doesn't take account for somebody's personality or interests or a lot of dreams. It's just simply that score on paper. I also think it's um, really looking for creative ways too that we can use people with disabilities. Sometimes that can be a real asset to other people because everybody has a gift that they can do. And it's just when somebody, a lot of employers also have to kind of know how do we accommodate somebody? How does a person feel comfortable with speaking up? What services does that person need to be able to thrive at their job? And I also think it's sharing our stories too. A lot of times there's that shame that just goes in with having a disability that people don't want to share because of being rejected
Mhm.
or people putting you in a little box when that you can't fit into. And I know that I have the privilege where I don't have to say that I have a disability because people generally don't know just by looking at me. But if I don't tell somebody that I can't do math or I really struggle with processing information, people are just going to look at me and say, "Oh, she's not motivated or she's not trying." So I think it's that speaking up and also being in a work environment and a society where, okay, how can we help you?
I mean, to add on to that,
Mm-hmm.
I really think it's all on the education of the person and
Yep.
the job and the training. There
Yep.
needs to be new training. You're right. There
Agree.
needs to be a new perspective of things because they've been doing this job for so long that, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, autism, ADHD, the whole neurodiverse spectrum
Mm-hmm.
is something. There are part of it that are invisible, that are more mental, and then there are those that are
Mm-hmm.
more physical that
Right.
you see. You and I have the invisible ones that people just see us and they don't think we're disabled. And I
Yep.
really think, I mean, beyond being educated in how to treat us, they also need to take a course in sensitivity because it's like half these people, when you sit down with them and you look at them, it's like they just don't want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And they just project it onto you, and you feel like, am I holding you up? And it's just like, no, I'm here, you're supposed to treat me. And this is why, as of this, I have refused to go to um meetings with family services for my SNAP because I had a
Mm-hmm.
meeting there when the first time Trump became president, he
Mm-hmm.
made it so you had to go for job training to renew. And
Right.
I had just got back from school and everything, and I got this notification and that said you have to go in to renew and you have to go for job training. And I went in the first, and the woman there at the family services was so rude. And she's like, either you
Mm-hmm.
choose or I choose the place to go for jobs. I'm like, do I have? She's like, you choose or I choose. And she's like, you may not like what I choose. And I'm like, okay. And I just chose. And I went there, and what people don't realize is This job training services is nothing. It's the same stuff we
Right.
do at home. We
Yeah.
look for jobs. We know how to write our resumes. We know how to
Hmm.
submit to job applications. It's the same stuff. But that's getting off to the point. But these people need a sensitivity training course because
Right.
you're dealing with humans. We all have emotions. We all have feelings. I understand you're tired and you've been there all day and all this, but you don't need to project it onto us.
I agree 100%. I think a lot of times I have had my last case, well, the caseworker before my last one was a kind woman. I can remember
Mhm.
her a lot. She understood a lot of that. But I agree. I've had some ones that weren't always nice. And when you said about the job training program, I had to do one of those before. And yeah, basically, I can remember one of the activities was circle all the jobs that you're interested in with job coaching. And
Hmm.
I thought, I could do this at home. And I had to take a bus to go down to do this. And a day where this is the time when I had some temp jobs and I was subbing in schools. And I'm thinking, I'm taking a day off of work to be able to go down and to do something that I could just simply do at home.
I mean, to add to that,
Hmm.
I asked them, I was volunteering at in one of our museums, 8 hours a day
Hmm.
on my feet all day. And I go, do you think volunteering would be considered work considering I'm not sitting at home? And they're like, we don't know, we'll see. Well, no, it wasn't. And by August, I believe my snap got canceled. And I said, you know what? It's not worth fighting it. I'm just going to renew. And that's what I did.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and I would think volunteering would count. I mean, you were out there, doing that, and yeah, I know. That's hard. I hear you on that. That can be really difficult. And I think it is that sensitivity. And the one caseworker that I just really remember having before my last one, she knew what it was like to struggle with math. She said, they've never diagnosed me with a math learning disability whenever I went to school, but she goes, I swear that I have one. So she understood whenever I was in school and I was struggling in a math class. And she really understood whenever I was struggling at a job. And but
Hmm.
even I think it's also hard to with jobs to claim that they're disability friendly. I can remember I worked for one that was an agency that provided healthcare in the homes, and they helped a lot of people with physical disabilities, and they could understand that. But when I was at their job working in the office and I made a lot of clerical errors and a lot of mistakes, they couldn't understand it. They thought that I was actually doing it on purpose so they would fire me and I could collect unemployment.
Jesus.
Yeah, that I was doing the best I could do, but they just can't. Oftentimes people just can't look at me and it's because they can't see it and they just think that I must be making it up or I'm bored and I create drama to do this when I'm really my brain is just struggling to figure out how to do a lot of those things.
No, let me ask you something. Going back
Mhm.
to being told that you couldn't accomplish anything. What was it like what was it like for your caseworker to tell you, to sit there and tell you you're not able to accomplish this? What was going through your mind at that point?
A lot of fear and a lot of negativity. I can remember just being fearful that, oh, what is going to happen to me when I go to college? What's going to happen when I take that class? Oh, what's somebody going to say? What's somebody going to think? Am I ever going to have a job someday? And those were some of the real fears that went through my mind. And I was really negative. I went through a lot of years where I thought the only thing that was going to make me complete is if my disability went away and I didn't have it, and my life would be perfect. Well, that didn't happen. My disability didn't go away. I certainly don't have a perfect life, but I have learned that I've had success and there are things that I love doing and that I'm good at. And when I focus on doing those, it's such an empowering feeling. And there's just so much joy that comes out of that rather than sitting around thinking about, oh, this is my disability. This is something that I wish would go away. but there's some joys that have come along with it. For example, I can't drive. And my husband's able to take me where I need to go. I'm also able to have a great coworker who takes me home. But whenever I don't have a ride, I get a chance to take walks. And people will tell me that I bring out, like, I love to take pictures of flowers. And they'll say, you bring out details of a flower that I would miss. And if I got so sad about that, I would miss so many shots. I literally get that chance to be able to go and stop and smell the roses and take those pictures. And I just think when I focus on the things that I am good at, it's just a much better headspace for me when I focus on, rather than focusing on what I don't have.
Now, does your disability affect your writing or your photography at all?
It does slightly with grammar and spelling, but now we have spell check. We have grammar, Hemingway app. I use a lot of that. So I'm able to be able to fix the writing that comes with that. It does affect my handwriting, so learning how to type was a real game changer for me. I can remember people when I was a lot younger would look at my handwriting and they would say, "Well, you're messy," or "You're sloppy." I even had a teacher who put a W indicating weakness on my report card in second grade, and that really didn't make me feel that great about myself. I've even had people that have said, "Oh, your handwriting looks like that of a serial killer."
No.
So, I, and that never made me feel wonderful. But when I learned how to type, it took me a whole semester of having 2 semesters to learn how to type. But now I'm able to do that. And that just, and an editor has not asked to see a handwritten copy, thank goodness. And the photography, I'm able to do that. It takes some patience, it takes some practice with that, but I am able to take a picture of a flower and I'm able to be able to do that and to bring out details with that.
Now, what got you into photography?
It was really interesting. I was at an one of my adult writing groups, and there was an older woman in our group that saw my pictures that I took at prom. And at the venue, there was a tree, and I took a picture of a tree. And all my peers said, "Why did you take a picture of a tree?" And this older woman in my group, she said, she looked at that photo of the tree and said, "Ah, this shows perspective." And I put that on the shelf for a number of years and I focused more on writing. But then I was at a family wedding and my husband and I stopped at a cemetery and they had these beautiful angel statues. And I took a picture of one of them and a friend of mine commented, "Wow, these are amazing." And that this was a friend that just did not give out compliments. She really, I thought, well, if she thought they were good, they must be good. So I entered them into an art show and I got honorable mention. And that just encouraged me to be able to take more pictures. And then I just started noticing when I was on my walks, all the beautiful flowers and just all the beauty that was out there. And I post them on my blog and my store, and they've been featured in magazines as well.
What is it like to have photos featured in magazines?
It's amazing. It's one of those things I just that was something I was told I would never be able to do, and I did it.
Now, you write. Besides your blog, do you write anything else? Have you written books?
I have I have 3 stories published in an anthology called Rediscovering Your Purpose, and I also recently had a story about the emotional baggage of having a disability published in The Baggage We Carry by Gnashing of the Teeth Press.
What is that like to have your own stories published and have millions of people reading them?
It's really an honor to have that. It's just, I love to be able to share my story, and my hope is that another person will read this and will be encouraged to be able to find what their dreams are in life and to pursue them.
Now, you say you're a peer educator.
Yes.
When did you decide to do that?
Whenever I was from the start, right after I moved out on my own, I worked some temp jobs in a school working with some students who had disabilities as a substitute. And I liked that. And after school, it took me a while to find the right job, and I went back to being a paraeducator. I can remember when they had a call for that, and I was looking for work. I thought, oh, I'm just going to get on the sub list because that was before they really hired permanent people. And I was really surprised when I got a call saying, hey, this is going to be a permanent position. And I've been doing it for over 13 years at with the same district. And I do enjoy getting in there and to making a difference in the lives of some kids because I can't speak for every single child, but a lot of the children I work with, it's so similar to my story. I hear a lot of kids saying, I hate my disability. I wish I didn't have an IEP. And I get that chance to tell them, well, it's not a bad thing to have a disability, and it's not a bad thing to have the individual education plan. And I can point them to resources, and I can also show them how to advocate. And I think that's just so important that a lot of our students know how to do this because my students will graduate someday, and they'll leave me, but their disability is not going to leave them. And they're going to have to be able to go out into a world where they're going to have to use their voice to speak up.
Now that answered my question. Is I was going to ask you, do you
Mhm.
see similar cases with students that you work with? And you apparently do. How do you help them get through the fact that, hey, you have a disability, but you need to handle it in the way that you see the positive side? Because I know from just talking with different people who are disabled, like me, who are either autistic, ADHD, or any
Mhm.
other kind of neurodiversity, see it, and some of them kind of see it as a hindrance. How do you get through to that, get through their mind, the positive side of it?
I think I try to look for things that my students are good at. Like if I see a student that's drawing a really nice picture, I'll say, "Wow, you're a really great artist." Or if I see them with a book, "Oh, what book are you reading?" And I might talk with them about that. I might also, or if they like to play sports, we can talk a lot about with that. And I think it's also just how I'm very realistic with a lot of my students. In most cases, I will say that I do have a disability. All the kids know, do not ask me for help with math, or they'll soon find out. But I think it's putting things in a really positive spin too. I mean, I try not I tell them it's not the end of the world. And I talk about sometimes with having what I've experienced with having mine and that speaking up and I think being honest, but also showing that somebody has a job. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to have a job. It doesn't mean that you can't have a marriage or you can't have a family or you can't go out and pursue college. And sometimes I can also point a lot of students in the right direction. I know sometimes they might say, well, I want to go to college. And I say, oh, well, did you consider maybe going to this college? They have a really good early childhood program because I know because I went there. Or, wow, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? And just be able to talk to them. My students are in seventh grade now, so it's still kind of early for them, but we're getting the ball rolling in the direction of their future.
Now, here's a question I'm pretty sure you've come across. Have you come
Mhm.
across students who come to you and say, my parents refuse to see my disability as a disability, as they take it in a negative form, and so they won't acknowledge my disability, so they won't get me on an IEP? And how do you deal with that?
Most of the students I haven't encountered with that. A lot of the students on our caseload have an IEP, and the families are there, and they know that their child has a disability. Sometimes we might have maybe differences on maybe how they handle that, but most of my students already have that. I don't encounter a whole lot of students that have that. I do see some where I'm like, yeah, these students need, why do they not have an IEP? Why are they not under some kind of services? But for the most part, we have a lot of families that are definitely on board with coming in and wanting those services for their child.
All right, let's go back to you getting your bachelor's degree. What was
Hmm.
that like? What did it feel like to get your bachelor's degree, to show these people at the Department of Rehabilitation Services, hey, I got my degree, something you said I can never do.
It was really amazing to do that. And I also I did a lot better when I went back to university. People would think that that would be a lot harder, but I found the program that was right for me and I used the accommodations. I had the extended test time. I had the tutoring when I needed it. And I advocated for myself. And I found when I
Mhm.
did all of this stuff, my grades really improved dramatically. I even made Dean's List for a semester. And when I graduated with my bachelor's degree, that was probably one of the most healing things that I ever did. That was the shift that started to change in my life. I thought, if I can do this, then I can do just about anything in my life. And I can just remember thinking, my disability didn't go away, but if I had the right services and I had the right programs, I could be successful in life.
Now, I want to ask you a question, a couple of
Hmm.
questions.
Okay.
Number one, when you were in college, have you had a professor that you were struggling with his class and you'd walk up to him and ask him, "Hey, can you help me?" and have him turn around and say, "If I help you, I have to have help everyone else, so I can't do that," even though he knows you're on a disability program.
I didn't have that experience very much at university, and I really didn't ask. I mean, thankfully, I didn't whenever I was at community college because I knew a person who did have a disability and asked, and she said, "Well, I don't give exceptions to anybody."
Oh.
So, and I can also remember I learned the hard way to ask for things in private. I can remember the one with the calculator. I asked for the calculator right in front of all my classmates, and she said, "Well, no, we use our brain, not a calculator." So I have had some that were like that. I also had a few that didn't quite understand the disability services that I would be using. I can remember they'd be like, "Oh, well, why do you need this?" And, "Oh, you're going to be fine." And I'm like, "No, I need to have the extended test time." Because
Hmm.
anytime that I didn't have it, my grades really didn't do well. And I didn't take advantage of that at community college. I really should have fought maybe harder for a lot of that. And I think that that would have improved in some of my classes. But for the most part, by the time I got to university, I had pretty understanding professors. And when I didn't think that they were understanding, I was definitely willing to speak up. I can remember right when I started, I had an advisor who was scheduling my classes, and I told him, I'm not a math person. I have a disability in math. Please don't give me a lot of math." And they said, "What about chemistry?" And I looked at him and I said, "Absolutely not." And I didn't even need the class, it turned out. But I think I was able to advocate for myself. And I knew even if I didn't have an understanding professor, I definitely knew that I could go get services with the Office for Students with Disabilities. And I knew what was going to protect me under ADA and I knew what wasn't.
Now, I want to ask you a question. You took
Mhm.
on-time testing. I know I hate on-time testing, but the way mine works, I'm wondering if anyone else has dealt with this before, is when I'm taking an on-time test in the room with a proctor, with other students, my mind doesn't think everyone in this room is taking different tests. My mind thinks, oh, everyone in this room is taking the same test. So when I see someone finish their test, my mind thinks, oh crap, I better hurry up and get out of here. I don't want to be the last one here. So I rush for my thing, hand it in, and leave. Have you dealt with that with yourself or not?
Right. I had to do extended test time because my brain just needs that extra time to think and the process. Otherwise, I'll rush through it. So I did extended test time as one of my accommodations. And I would go to a room and I would have the form that the professor filled out, have the test. And I can just remember I had a tutor that was in my for my logics class, and he had ADHD. and he was taking another test, but we were both in the same room taking a test at that time. And it was just so affirming to look over. And there my tutor is, the one that I think has all the answers for himself. And he just needs that extra time too. And we talked about that at our session the other time. He goes, yeah, my brain just needs that extra time as well. It's no big deal. And yeah, I agree. Extended test time is just so important because otherwise you don't want to be the last one,
Hmm.
and just your brain just sometimes needs that extra time or to go back over the test and just to make sure that you got the questions answered correctly as well. And some people do really well with having the test read aloud to them. I know when I was in high school and elementary school, they would read it aloud to me. And I know sometimes kids are like, why are you reading this aloud to me? And we're like, well, sometimes your brain picks up better on information if you read it out loud.
I mean, that's so true. I mean, people don't realize those of us who are neurodivergent, we're either
Hmm.
we're either visual thinkers, physical thinkers, or audio. We do better with physical, audio, or visual. I mean, I'm a very much a physical person to the fact that
Hmm.
you literally have to sit there, write it out on a piece of paper, show me how each step works for my mind to
Hmm.
look at it, process it,
Yep.
and then for my mind to understand it. I remember I was sitting in class. I was sitting with a friend. We're sitting down and we're talking. And I'm like, "Can you explain this to me, the math of this? Because I didn't understand it."
Hmm.
And he's going over it, and I'm getting excited because I understand it. But the minute I leave, it's like gone. I'm like,
Yeah.
damn.
Mhm.
Why don't they hold that information in so I can understand it? And it's gone.
Yeah, it's that short-term memory that's really hard sometimes. And yeah, I hear that. I hear you on that too, because sometimes I could study for a test and I wouldn't do well on it. And it wasn't because I wasn't putting forth the effort. It was just my brain would forget. And it wasn't necessarily test anxiety either. I hear you on that. And that is one of the things that they did tell me when they were testing me uh, with all the evaluations, that I don't have one particular learning style. I'm not just a visual learner.
Mhm.
I'm not an auditory learner. I'm not really kinesthetic. I have to have a lot of different things going on to be able to understand that. And I have to really have something that I can pay attention to. My friends are always amazed that I cannot memorize math facts or how to do math. But I can remember if they tell me a story about somebody that they knew that I never met before, but that story made a big impact on me. I can tell you that story verbatim and we'll talk about that. They're like, you don't even know that person. How did you remember that? But there's always there's just, for some reason, with personalities and just hearing stories like that, I can tell you information about somebody.
It kind of reminds me of when I was younger, I went for a job interview, and as I hand the
Hmm.
interviewer my resume, he's looking at it. He's like, "You have two different types of things here. You say you're good with computers and you're good with this." He's
Hmm.
like, he's like, "You're two different types of thinker." He's like, "You're an abstract thinker and you're a literal thinker." And that just stuck with me. It's like it's how my mind works. But in reality, I'm more of a creative person than the logical.
Right.
So logic goes like out the window. And so programming and things like that just don't connect with me. But
Yep.
if it comes down to like doing something creative, designing something,
Hmm.
I I'll go hog wild and it'll come out great.
Yep.
Anyways, tell me a little bit about your shop.
I have a store where I sell different things with my photography. Right now, I'm selling prints, and I take pictures of flowers and other things with nature, and I just love to be able to bring out those details. A lot of the flowers are abstract, and I just try to, I have like a lot of roses and dahlias and other things with nature.
So, what advice do you have for those dealing with the same situation you and I have gone through? And what could you tell them to help them when they have to deal with it?
One of the first things I would tell somebody is to know what you want to do. Don't have a caseworker or a voc rehab worker tell you what you can and can't do. You know what you are capable of, and you know also know what your dreams are, and it's just about finding a way to be able to do that. And I just encourage people to be able to find resources and to be able to find help to be able to do that. And I think it's also important to remember the success doesn't always come in the package that you expect. Sometimes it comes in something even better.
And finally, where can people find out more about you and learn about your shop?
You can find me at my blog, www.mrsmichellesmission.com, and I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Reed Miles. That was Michelle Steiner, and I'll see you in the next one. See you there. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.